Right, so we got this timer here, so we're going to try to keep it as quick as possible. I love how I can just drag this where I want it to go and have a note at the top, which I can edit if I want to see, track the state before and not. And actually it's not really a timer, it's a stopwatch, but there's no that button, but we don't need one anyway. So let's go into topologizing for writing fiction. I had some guy asking me about, well, what about if you got advice of how to write off someone else? I think, number one, I don't read books because I don't want it to unfairly influence or prejudice my own writing. And number two, I've got my own sort of way of how I do my planning, and if I was to do it the way other people do it, it would kind of feel different. It would feel different. So let's full screen this topologizing for writing fiction. So my knowledge bank, it's very patchy and disjointed. It just zigzags. And the way I think of how we put stuff together, it's devoid of structure, devoid of sequence, devoid of hierarchy. What do I mean by that? So let's talk about how we want to have an idea. How do ideas come into reality? You have a presupposition, you're just going about your biz, going through the day, and you think, hang on a minute, isn't this kind of presupposition? Then we need to put that into a concept. Then once you've formulated it, you got a nice blueprint, and you've thought it through to a more coherent manner. Actualization, it's on the page. So let's look at this analogy. I feel like these analogies. I'm not really a fan of learning for the sake of learning. You see these people and they spend over 10 years studying insects and how the wings make them fly, or the trajectory of a tennis ball and go for it in physics. They're coming up on some minute doctorate, probably because they work at Braun doing micro-engineering, the movements of things at very small distances, or like Dyson. Or people that love learning languages, natural health, and all like 5 languages, and they have a huge amount of knowledge of natural health. You go to that house and they got the bookshelves, and the bookshelf is huge full of books. Most of these books they never read, or maybe they've read at least half of them, or most of them, or all of them, but it's not how I work. So I only learn things which I can practically use in my day-to-day life. If I can't really use it in day-to-day life, then I don't really see the point of learning it. So to use the image with the biscuit trays, most of them will be empty, and for the ones that have something, it's going to be filled halfway or below half. So most of these trays have nothing in it, and it's going to be filled below half. So that's the analogy. Here's another analogy. You know, Bloomberg, they've got 2 magazines. One's called Business Week, and another one's called Bloomberg Markets, and it's for a different type of news. Business Week is more story based, and Bloomberg Markets is more stock market based. But you got these 6 reasons, like short selling. They sell the shares, so people are buying it back. Now, Elon Musk, he hates Bill Gates because Bill Gates is short selling Tesla. He's buying it at Tesla shares, selling it, and then buying it back once, which is making the share price go down. He don't like that. And then you got TV channels and record labels. So, you know, let's say TV, because it's expensive to make TV shows. We all know that. So they make 10 shows, and let's say 2 or 3 make these profits, and they subsidize in the rest of the other 7 or 8. So you're relying on the minority to subsidize the majority. So kind of hedge your bets there. You can pause that to read it. And then number 3, circling on a P wave, where when you get stocks and you zoom out, it follows the pattern. I know at Apple and these Fortune 500 companies have got their A class, B class, C class stocks. So if you're not part of the in crowd, your stock's not going to be worth as much in magnitude compared to other stocks. But if you'd have bought Apple in 2010, where would it have been? If fast forward 15 years, you wouldn't have gained much. It's very flat line, so it's a kind of a dead stock. And then number 4, it's kind of like reactive, it's not proactive, and it prioritizes competitive analysis or threat modeling. So what is the purpose of police? To prevent, detect, and investigate crime. If you have a police presence, a visible police presence in the city centre, then that provides a deterrent against shoplifting, because you can see the police on the streets ready to swoop in. So stuff like that. So the stock market tends to be very proactive. I mean, it's more reactive than it is proactive. And then if the stock price moves up like 0.5 or 1% gross profit, like a blip. But he says that all types of values equal. And if you have a labour value, which is, someone drove someone in a car, or someone's a care worker, they work as a nurse in a hospital and they providing care, or they're a social worker, or I write a book, or, and just someone's a property speculator, or a scalper, or a drop shipper. And people just sit on things for 10 years, wait for it to go up in price and sell it on. 10 years later, that's more speculative. And who says that all different types of values equal in economics? That's not a job thing. That's a money thing about what drives growth. And, it's just that sort of thing. And I've got my own opinion there, but we don't need to get into that now. So let's look at the analogy. So basically, you can see these companies talk about, hey, we're going to do some changes, we're making it more expensive, and we want you to pay more for less, and we're removing features, and we're merging companies, and we're shutting things down. And it's like Nintendo want to shut down these DSi shop, Wii shop, and they want to, Disney doing all this, they want to shut down all these things. And you think, who's excellent spreadsheet manager's idea was it for that? Whose spreadsheet manager idea was it for that? So you see, they're all counting numbers, but then when you see this design stuff, where instead what we have to do is we have to define the customer demographic base. We look at what the customer base is. Hey, we can't zoom out anymore. And we predict what problems they're going to have in advance. Then we design to the base and prevent against copycat replicas. Probably just how this thing works. So it's more of a proactive thing than a reactive thing. We're not really coming up on some spreadsheet manager thing. Let's put the zoom back on. Yeah, we can close that. So, yeah, definitely. So, you see about this marketing where you use different products, and you can tell if you had to think about one of the three, which one the product for, especially if you're using like project management and to do this, anything B2, even like office equipment, like chairs, where you have to sit on an office chair that's ergonomic. So you see, with the case thing, it's based on that they brought those scooters based on personal preferences domain. We need something that works for everyone. And stage, they always, they're neither here or there. They keep being fickle-minded. They keep pivoting. So we can see. So yeah. So we can see. You can just tell when you use a product which one of the three it is. So you really do. So to just sit there and differentiate on features, or to just take a very numerical, I don't think it works like that. So that's kind of like what we want to do. And as an analogy, imagine someone playing Monopoly as a stock market person. If you're playing as a marketer, you're playing Mahjong. But then with Mahjong, all the pieces on the board is there. We're not adding more on the board than is already added. With the stock market, I think you do have the chance deck and the community challenge deck. But I think numbers don't lie, but numbers have a context. Words provide a context, but words bend. yeah, the meaning of words bend. So it's kind of like that. So it's a whole different thing about if your numbers, about numbers that don't lie, but without a context, and which one of the two do you lie in? And I think we don't really want to get into this very, what's it called? We don't like to have a sequence, structure, and hierarchy. Rudimentary knowledge bank, Apache, that's a sensitive topics. And you can pause the video if you really wanted to read what I said there in that explanation. You know, I'm gonna scroll down slightly so you know when to pause. So, when if you can zoom in on this. Yeah, I've got that. Yeah, you definitely can zoom in. Let's zoom in some more, but in case it's responsive, it's going to put the arrows there. Right, let's scroll down. You can pause the video at will. Right, there you go. Let's put the zoom back. Now, let's look at this planning thing. So, hooks versus tropes. I don't really hear British people talk about tropes. At least not the right as I say where I live, the country I live in. So, we can name some. I don't read books because I don't want it to subconsciously influence or say just my own writing. So, I'm not going to go on that website either. I don't want to get influenced. I tend to have a long-term memory. That's sort of good, I like to think. But not really know how to compare that to anyone else. The other people's is going to be better or worse than mine. So, dramatic and theatrical irony. When the audience knows something the characters don't know. This is typically done in a theatre due to time and scenery constraints. Adding a new character to pad out the scene once it gets boring, as the scene cannot be fast-forwarded to the storyline. Self-explanatory. Basing each character on the 7 deadly sins. Stories like SpongeBob, I don't know what it's called, but the equivalent of some prophetic dream, The Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, Quick Cross Christmas Past, Present and Future, and so on, I was guided. I'm sure I've seen other shows do that. You know, it's fiction cartoons. So contrast, it's in theatre. So contrasting this, so Hook could be about any taxonomy type characters, objects, conflicts, impending or possible deals, and changes, public attitudes, consensus committee, misaligned God, personal differences, aspirations and long haul scenery. I just draw mind maps, diagrams, grids, this and that. So yeah, there's one I made earlier which was to do with, let's say, I'll get to that later. So yeah, we can have any type of graph or any type of diagram and this and that. Yeah, we can do that. We can do that. So yeah, we can just leave the imagination, just think outside the box, I like to think. So this actually was a mind map, but I have to go in my drawers or attic or something and see this thing I wrote 15 years ago. It's going to take hours, can't find it. You basically have a circle and the spokes would go outwards and you'd see each of these on it. That's what you'd see. So, you know, and the hooks. So imagine like these characters on the right hand side. Imagine they're all hooks. So as the story develops, you have all these layers because the hook builds and it builds and it builds and it builds. And as the layers come in, it gets thicker and thicker and thicker. So this is why we do not write in a free-form way. And if you wanted to do linguistic coding, you could look at the who how, objective, overall lesson, and we could have a tally for each time one of these things pop up and say, yeah, that happened 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you can do that for every one of these hooks and see how it builds over time. That was me telling the end of a book. It's 2025 now. I wrote it, I think, 15 years ago, way back. But yeah, I don't work from left to right, beginning to end. I instead look at the hook and work backwards. Same with music, because my mastering style is sort of dense. So imagine you have a dinosaur and you want to make a 3D dinosaur pair-mache. So you have a metal wireframe made out of wire, and then you want to build on the wire. So let's say a triceratops or rhinoceros. And you have the metal wireframe, like that thin pipe, and then you paper mache over it. You're going to start in the middle and work your way outwards. That is actually how I do my production, especially because of the mastering style being dense. I don't work from left to right, I work from the inside out. You get a certain feel. Now, let's look at this screen studio software. I like this software, but it feels very mechanical, hierarchical. You can pause that if you want to read what I said. Like people walk around in punch cards in the 1960s, put the punch card in and it pops all the holes or marks it. And some of them, you can reuse the same punch card all over and over again. You don't need to have small circle holes falling on the floor. It does feel a bit, but then, I actually want to make my own writing software when I'm older, I think. So you can see that it does look structured. So yeah, and we can then think, let's go to, let's say, database structures. Let's take a break there. There's database structures going to be somewhere. Yeah, database structures. So you've got key value. A good example is the metadata you get on photos. When you can, make that bigger. Yeah, we can. So, you've got their info. That's of the just the normal stuff. EXIF, GPS, TIFF, and you can see what's going on with that. Put the zoom back, and you can see the key value. Same with that's going to be a JSON field. Key value structure. You can see that. Oh, let's go into structured, which is going to be like database tables. Like 99% of computer databases, I think, will work in that. I think number 2, it's going to be like a key value, like a bucket or tree structure, but you can see the tables. Kind of like Microsoft Excel, where you've got the headers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you can see it better there. Select anything from that table, order by weight, and you can see the IDs, the columns. It's just a table. There's no ID number, which you can see there. Doesn't have a unique column. That means ID, but it's still a table. But then if we move away from SQL or structured query language, here's how I think. It's just very stickers. So, as I said before in the Mesh Discord server chat room, the policy has to be based on the principle, and the precautions have to be based on the threat model. And I tend to be very, is it methodical or tenacious or principled or multitudinal consideration or whatever word they're going to leave in dictionary. I don't know the word properly. Might need to get in my philosophy dictionary and just take hours read through it. And you basically have a sentence, you have a principle, but then people want me to explain it. So let's say assertion, that's X. And then you've got justification, X is Y. Then you've got the reasoning, X is Y because of Z. and the rationale. That's like 3 paragraph, 5 paragraph, 8 paragraph explanation with like Aesop's fables, analogies, stories, history, backstory. You got the Russian dolls, you got a doll inside a doll. You got the Cassandra shoe. That seems very unstable. Imagine keeping your money in there. Or some people keep their money under the bed. Tree structure, five folders bucket, and it's just a tree. A graph. The human brain actually stores data inside a graph. Some people say it's stored in a Markov tree, which you get to later. But how do you convert the graph in your brain to the table or bucket structure that computers have? Hey, that was from their previous analogy. You can see that graph, it's all united. I've no idea why that's there. I need to read that. I don't know where that came from. No idea. And that's meant to be a pyramid tree or a Markov chain. On the bottom right, you see the Fibonacci sequence. On the top left, you see binary numbers. I believe 11 is going to be 3 in binary numbers. So you can see that that's actually these 4 sorting algorithms. Maybe Huffman sort, I don't know. But yeah, really, you think do you think data would be stored? And I tend to be very into that sticky notes that you saw there. Let's go back to what I was going back to, which was topologizing for writing fiction. So we have all these hooks and all these stickers, and we think, we've done part 3, and we think, how do linguistics work? Taxonomy, hierarchy, topology, semantics, pragmatics, schematics. Generative AI can understand the first 3, but the bottom 3 they can't understand. Best way to compare, I think, the topology is fluid, but the schematic is static. Sounds very catchy, don't you think? So you can see taxonomy there about nutritional information. In America, it is Wolfram Alpha. Unfortunately, they don't really have British fast food in the Wolfram Alpha. But I could at least get it all formatted good. But, the glucose, high fructose glucose syrup, I want to see that out of it. And then you see Discogs. Yeah, they've got the taxonomy there. You got one with the veg, news article, pop topic, some pop culture website. They've got streamers, influencers, YouTubers. You can see that there. And another taxonomy example, which hierarchy we collect here. It's meant to be a link aggregator to compete with Reddit, but they need more funding. More contributors. Hierarchy, these academic essays about science and maths. That used to be called Demos, which was previously owned by Yahoo. They're independent now. You can see the fundraiser. To apologize, I'm actually using this as a neologism. That is when a writer uses a word from the dictionary, but within the context of the writer using it, it means something completely different inside their own writing or speech or blog or book or whatever than what it would mean in the dictionary. So here's what I think it means. What it actually means, I don't really know. You can see what I mean by the image. So we're not really categorizing or tagging. It's a very loose kind of way. Pragmatics. Let's load that image up. Let's zoom out again. Pragmatics, what is it? Have you told someone you're cold and intended for them to close the window? Have you ever asked someone to put the kettle on and expected them to make you a cup of tea? This is pragmatics. If you are interested in understanding why you say these things or do these actions, then you should study pragmatics. When studying pragmatics, you look at sarcasm, irony, conversation and maxims, meaning and context, implicature, politeness or impoliteness, and semantics. We would like to prove to you that pragmatics is a fun subject. It is deeply interesting. There are many areas to convert in this field, and once you understand how it works, you can have so much fun listening to everyday conversations while knowing the true intentions in the speech. For more on why pragmatics is fun to study, This is a video about Graham William on why mathematics is studied. Even tone of voice could be mathematics. What university is this? The University of Sheffield. And you can see they don't need to go into the other things about various methods, empirical, corpus, experimental, theoretical, historical. You can zoom in and, read that later. But let's go back to the normal zoom and scroll down. You can pause that to get to what you want to get. So I ain't too fussed about trying to read that out. But things we think about are that speech from there, and there's a subtext for what's being implied. So yeah, there's definitely what to read about online. It's just all over, maybe even write about. Sometimes it's just all over the place. Oh yeah, schematics. So once you've got the topologizing, you can then move it into our schematics, which we can do. So you've got this emotion chart. For me anyway, other people, the way they want to do their emotion chart diagram schematics, that's up to them. But I see it the way I want to see how we convey. We might as well frame that as a poster, stick it on the wall with blue tack so we don't have holes in things. And these schematics. So yeah, it's a schematic. Oh, my pocket notepad, and you can see my trading card notepad, which I put some of the images in, and then, wait, let's scroll down there. Boom! There you go. Wrap your head around that. You see what I mean, don't ya? So, we can see what's going on. So it's devoid of structure, sequence and hierarchy, and to have a rudimentary knowledge bank that is patchy and disjointed, and it lacks extensive manner and right in a very free-form manner. You can close that tab. So let's give an example. So let's say Fairly Odd Parents, one of the best shows Nickelodeon put out, but when they've got the dialogue and they've got the speech, they've all the time, we want to put this many minutes for that scene and that scene and that scene, and to get from one square to another, they're gonna use tropes, because it's a very tropey TV show. You can just tell, they use a trope to get from thing to thing. We don't play like that, but at least I don't. I want to do the hook thing. And Melise in Writervana, you go to writervana.com, and she's got this tutorial of all this structure. It's like reading Encyclopedia Britannica or Microsoft Encarta if you were born in the early 90s. And yeah, this is interesting. We disagree on what a hook is, but then when I talk about writing lessons, I can only give around 2 or 3 lessons. I can count on one hand the amount of lessons I can give. Or that person's got a nice catalogue of, I can count on over one hand or 2, or maybe more than 2 hands. But I only count on one hand. She's talking about 4 hands over 20 different lessons. So, yeah, we disagree on what a hook is. We disagree. So this person asking me about should I get advice on how to write from other people, and we disagree on what things are. VSM, value strategy method. So her thing is more linear, left to right, whereas mine is more freeform, like give 1, get 4, like birds with feet, give 1, get 4. So we're not going to agree. You want to ask about techniques, I can only give a handful, whereas they can give so many. So I think it's the hook's the British way, but the trope thing sounds American, and she's coming off on a very topologized type thinking. I'm coming off on a very scholarly type thinking. I have no idea where this needs to go. I need to put it somewhere, but I can't find somewhere to fit it, but it has to fit somewhere, so I don't know where I'm going to fit it. That person, where they've got, they do live streams where you can write along and write with them and ask questions and just give that motivation, especially if you work at home or you're stuck in the house, because it's a very solitary activity. So to have a break from the norm, especially when you're stuck into the four walls and anything blends into the wallpaper. It can be good to have that break where you've got people writing with you to get that motivation, especially after work, and especially because, there's people work and you can't really have the conversations you want to have chatting with this and that. But when you see this person talk about how to plan your book in so many minutes, and look at this, it looks very structured. Now, would you ever see me come up with something like that? How to plot your book in 12 minutes? Could you imagine me coming up with something after everything I've just said? Do you think I would do that? It seems a bit too structured, and it's not how I work. Look at this extension. Info, comments, related. Blam, wrap your head around that. So, consistency. I love these 8-bit planner sites. It's helpful to them, but I've got a different planning style, so we're not going to do that. But when I see that, it seems a bit too structured, too linear for me. Too linear, too structured. And I can't play like that. Too hierarchical. I tend to be, sticky. Then like card sorting, where you've got the jigsaw like Ravensburger, the best brand, and you do the corner pieces, and you want to do the blue for the landscape, for the sky. You might have light blue and dark blue. You might have, if they've got concrete, then you're going to have grey, maybe brown because of mud, and you might have the green for grass, and you might have the one that's sticky up like a U, but it's facing upwards and it sticks out, or you might have two sticky outs, and so you start off, it's all a mess, and you put that in 2 piles and 3 piles and 4 piles. Once you get enough of the same, you can create these piles. So it's like a very card sorting. That's how I like to work, and they coming off with this structured thing. It reminds me of working in a supermarket and you're checking the stock. This one is in date. This one has this amount. Or you're cleaning buses and you're counting what needs replacing. Wait, this seat is good, clean. We did that task and that task and that task to that bus, and that task and that task and that task to that bus. Or tick, tick, tick. That's done. That's done. That's done. Like a sort of R&C, risk and compliance, or cleaning, or stock check. And I can't I see that and I don't know what she says for the rest of the video, but just me seeing that, it doesn't fit into how I plan. And this topologizing thing, which is a very freeform type thing, I've already done that with the writing, so I might do it with the music. So this is the most important thing. We don't work from left to right, beginning to end. We look at the hook and work backwards. So when I write, I have like a skeleton, like a warframe dinosaur. If you're making a type triceratops or rhinoceros, and we paper mache on top, and we don't really come up with these rigid, devoid of structure, sequence and hierarchy, and have very rudimentary knowledge bank. It's patchy and disjointed. Let me update that. Yeah, we've updated that. It makes more sense now. Now, I'm going to stop this video and put it in. And hopefully, if you explained how we plan things, and we can use that for the writing, the music. But hope that explains everything. I'm going to stop that now.